Good morning. I hope that you are having a wonderful summer. I know I am. It's very full and very wonderful. As you could tell, I had a little note passed to me by Pastor Ray. No one else but a pastor would I let do that. Just kidding. For the adult discussion group, there's been a misprint. This week was what is in your bulletin. Next week is going to be the chaplain from Torrance Memorial. My guess is if you don't wake up at 8:30 in the morning anyway, you probably won't go. But if you normally go to ADG, that is what is on the docket for next week. And I've actually met the chaplain from Torrance Memorial, and he is a wonderful man. And so that should be a good time. If you drove by, well, honestly, towards the end of the week, that you saw on the billboard what I love to do, as you know, take some form of cultural, iconic reference, and most of you come in here and go, I'm coming to, if you're aware, last time I did Yoda, this time we're doing Harry. If you're aware, we're on our summer series called Indispensable Summer, which comes from a book about indispensable relationships written by a Lutheran pastor named Leonard Sweet. And he basically has this concept that we've taken on as our summer kind of mission, that is that we work best as human beings when we are in relationship with other people. And we're actually giving you some examples biblically of what those kind of relationships look like. And for the Bible explorers, the kids have been talking about different kinds of friendship, because we all have friends. Some friends are good for us, and we want to think about what kind of friend we are and what kind of friends we want to have. And so that's what's been happening this summer. Last time I talked, as I said, about Yoda, who is, in my opinion, even though he's not real, is a very good example of a mentor. And today we're doing the flip side of protege. As I said to the kids, who I know were thrilled at my derivative of Latin, kids love that. They do, trust me. Protege derives from the same Latin root as the word protector. And so a protege is someone that we seek to protect from bad theology, from bad things in the world, not insulate them, but protect them, and maybe even protect them from themselves. But we all, as we needed mentors, we all also need proteges. And I don't mean someone that we can impart all of our information to, like a quiz, right? Did you learn what I just heard? Not rote information. What we need is to be the kind of people who inspire the next generation. Taking these kinds of proteges under our wings, giving them room to be inventive and creative as they tackle issues in the church and in this community that we don't even know about yet. The future will do that. We have an obligation to create an environment where their future creativity and the unwritten future that is before us is unleashed. We are those people. We need proteges. The seed, do you know, of the theological implications of the answers to the questions that aren't even being asked yet, the seeds are in this very room. Now. Yes, Elizabeth, now. She looked a little disturbed by that. And we need to pass that information, that experience with God, that understanding we have on. Not just for them, but for us. So my question for you today is, whether you've been here for 40 minutes, or 4 years, or 40 years, is who is your protege? Now I chose the passage that Sam so eloquently read today from the book of Thessalonians because I think it represents a good model for us to follow. Now what you need to understand is that Paul discipled people like Timothy, right? I talked about Timothy before in this pulpit, and he also really did a great job of starting churches and keeping churches going. And what you heard in today's verses were Paul's attempt to protect the church, the house church that met in the town of Thessalonica. Let's review a little bit Timothy. Timothy is sent to Thessalonica. Timothy is sent to help out because he's Paul's protege. How was Timothy mentored? Do you remember we talked about this? Well, I'll just say it. First, by his grandmother and his mother, right? Some of Timothy's most impressive, Timothy, one of the main pastors that gets the first church going, he was mentored first by his grandmother and his mother, by his family. And secondly, by Paul, who had the skills necessary with which to give him the theological insight to be a pastor. So he was mentored by what I call presence. We've talked about this before, where we are to be present for people, and that alone, that presence, that being there, that longevity, that holding the hand, mentors people. So his family did that for him in his faith. And then he got mentored by Paul, who had the skills, who was mentored by what I call preparation. The two P's, presence and preparation, are the way that we mentor others and the way that we get mentored, because we need people in our lives who are present, people in our lives who are like fans, who cheer us on, who are excited to see us, who want us to do great things. And we need people in our lives who can figure out how to have us do those great things. They have skills. Paul mentored the Thessalonian church in the same way. He imparted wisdom from the truth of Scripture, the gospel, which are his skills, and he also had a deep and abiding love for them, so much so that when he couldn't visit them, he sent Timothy, who, as you know, was like a son to him. And in these verses are my favorite passage, is my favorite passage that Paul writes in all of Scripture, because I know for many, and Sam and I had a quick discussion about this before church, for some of you, Paul is a very difficult person to understand his writings. Some of his writings seem rather harsh and difficult, and as Sam pointed out, what he read today sounded a little arrogant, sounded a little like, "Hi, I'm Paul, and you better listen to me, because I'm awesome." But what you have to understand is that Paul was talking to the church in Thessalonica, and they were on a very important road, a passageway. As you know, Romans love their roads, right? And if you read in chapter 17 of Acts, it gives you a little the history of the church in Thessalonica. And in fact, in my Bible, there's little kind of headlines, and the headline for chapter 17 of Acts is "The Uproar in Thessalonica," right? Sounds kind of ominous. Well, what you find out is Paul went to this little town as he's traveling somewhere else. He goes into the local church, the established local church, and basically starts talking about Jesus, this Christ figure. And so some people follow him. Some people that were Jews, some people that were Greeks, and in Acts it even says, and some prominent women. I love how they add that. Just in case you were wondering, there was women there too. I mean, in that time you had to wonder, so they make it clear. Women are there too. And what you find is that after this church starts by Paul, there's an uproar, and the local church leaders who are not happy with this newfangled theology basically put some of the first church leaders, including a man named Jason, in jail. And not only did they have an uproar about the early Christian church in Thessalonica, but when Paul goes to the next city, they follow him with a mob. So the church in Thessalonica is facing some terribly difficult times. And they're probably wondering, as Paul has left them, if they should just pack it all in. I mean, I know Paul can be persuasive, but there are these guys with bats, and maybe they didn't have bats back then, huh? Whoops, sorry. With sticks they found from palm tree, no. They're angry looking people, and they're outside of the church, and they're saying, we do not want this new church in this city, and they're following Paul around, and they're getting super upset. And so a lot of times when you read Paul's letters, you're reading harsh theology because Paul is trying to both encourage the early church and sort of kick their butt a little. Can I say that in the pulpit? I think it applies. right? So he's saying some things that are difficult to hear because that's sometimes what people need to grow. And so that is why, as we think of Paul as the first and early and amazing theologians, after all, he wrote the book of Romans, which is where we get a lot of our theology from. This verse, to me, stands out. It's my favorite part of Paul's letters. And he says this, in the midst of the passage that Sam just read, he says, "So deeply do we," meaning him and Timothy and the early church leaders, "care for you, that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our very own selves, because you have become so dear to us." Now, isn't that an amazing concept from a church leader who is just maybe supposed to be giving out theological information? Let me tell you what's true. Well, we loved you so much, we didn't just want to share with you what was true, because that's important, but we shared with you our own selves. We poured ourselves out before you because we loved you that much. And that, my friends, is how you treat a protege. You share not only the information that will be passed on to the next generation, but you share your very self with those who are to take what we know into the future. And he uses an imagery of a mother and a father. He talks about Paul coming to them as a mother does, as a nurse does with her children, and Paul coming to them as a father would with instruction. Because proteges in that sense, like I told the little kids, and some not so little, who came up front earlier, that proteges are to be protected. They're like our children. And so the best image that Paul can come up with that's available for him is the image of family, That we are not just a place to attend on Sunday mornings, but we are a family. Organized religion. Have you ever heard of that? I don't believe in organized religion. But really, what this religious building houses, what we call a church, is really, in essence, a family. It's a family. This week, on Friday, I saw Sue Mayo a lot. Okay, does anyone know who Sue Mayo is? Raise your hand, Sue. I saw her a lot because I saw her in the middle day helping Nancy Kay, Nancy Stark, Julie Crum, and I did a little of the work. Not a lot, trust me. Put up some of the decorations for VBE, which is happening, as you know, on Monday. I saw her in the office a little later because she was looking for a key, because she was helping organize the Mariners event that was going to be here Saturday. I saw her come early to the youth play on Friday night to help usher, and I saw her and her husband stay to the very end of the youth play to cheer all the kids on. And when I asked her, why are you're here? I mean, I get paid to be here. You're just here. And she said, because this is my family. This is my family. What wouldn't I do for my family? And that, I think, is an incredibly amazing concept that Paul makes very clear in the early church. Because an organized religion is not what Jesus started and handed off to Paul. He started a movement, an extended family of sorts, a spiritual family, where Jesus came and said, you think that this group of people, this small group of people holds the secret to God and relationship with God? And Jesus says, no, it's for everyone. It's for everyone. All who call God his family. All who call God family. That is what the church is. Jesus used words in Scripture, and Paul later takes them on. Words like father and adoption and children and loyalty and loving and household. Those are all words that describe the church, describe the first followers of Jesus. Does that sound like organized religion to you? Adoption? Loyalty? Family? No. And for those of you who are thinking, oh, that's such a sappy term for church, family, well, then you've never been in a family, right? You know those TV shows called Intervention?